Another Larkin. The mower stalled twice. Kneeling, I found a hedgehog jammed up against the blades, killed. It had been in the long grass. I had seen it before and even fed it once. Now I had mauled its unobtrusive world unmendably. Burial was no help. Next morning I got up, and it did not. The first day after a death, the new absence is always the same. We should be careful of each other. We should be kind while there is still time. I was thinking of this poem today, transporting my new little furry friend to the local park, or where I eventually disposed of him, which was in this little narrow alleyway kind of just before the park. So last night while I was editing my last T&E, I saw this little flash of grey moving across the skirting board, and I realised that I had a mouse companion with us. It darted under the bed, and that got the jitters into me. The thought of sleeping in a bed with a mouse under it, I don't know, why would that trouble a human creature? Me so large, it so small. I mean, tiny little mouse. And then I remembered that I had some, whatever they called, friendly traps, where you can kind of capture them and then let them free again. And so I stuck up 2 of these around the flat with a big slice of pecorino cheese, inside. I was thinking, well, give the little fella something to eat while it's in there, if it gets caught. And it did get caught. And maybe I should have taken it out earlier, but I didn't. I waited a few hours, I did my human necessities, did a bit of exercise, tidied up, and all the time the little mouse was just sitting there. Most of the cheese had kind of moved underneath the little platform, and so he couldn't really get at the cheese, I realised afterwards. And so by the time I took the mouse out, strutting down the road, on a mission, because supposedly mice can find their way back, you have to take them 3 miles out or something, otherwise they'll find their way back. I thought, well, I'm not going to do 3 miles. Come on, this is a tiny little mouse. How's it going? We'll take it a mile. Take it a mile out. And the mouse was still alive, but I guess it hadn't had food. It was cold. I sort of put it down and I expected it to just scurry off into the long grass, kind of like, hey ho, leave us some pecorino. See you later, buddy. Yeah, it's much nicer out here. I don't want to be under your bed or, I don't know, scurrying around in your habitation. This is great out here. It's nice and fresh. Lots of birds flying around. That's what I expected it to do. In fact, it just sort of sat there, like some character in a Beckett play, It's just like, that's what it did.
No! You can let him go.
And then, of course, you know, the idiot then had to enter. He couldn't just leave it there, allowing it to probably die within the next 15, 20 minutes, you know. Then he had to go and find a little piece of cardboard to kind of maneuver it at least off the path in the hope that maybe it would be recovering and or maybe one of its, you know, more country park buddies would be passing by, see it there, go, hey, are you okay? Yeah, I just got evicted from a house. But it's good, you know. Guy left this piece of pecorino cheese for us to eat. You know, I'll find somewhere else to live. It's all good. But I don't think that's how it went. So I suppose the question for the ye is something like this. I don't know. It's like, I mean, we know, if we talk about a virtuous act, we know what that means in terms of our human consciousness. But is there really such a thing as a virtuous? Is there even such a thing? Because, you know, this, presumably, what I tried to do, even though it was a total balls up, and in fact caused probably more misery than if I had just put down some traditional poison. At least it would have drifted off into a kind of stupor of well-fed satisfaction. But what I attempted to do, was that a virtuous act, or was it just another self-serving, egotistical act, just to try and make me feel better for not disposing of this creature that I didn't want to share my house with? And you know what us humans are like, right? We don't want to share our house, our land, our country. Exterminate, or imprison, give you some food, and then kind of take you away and then release you into the wild, and you can fend for yourself. And you'll probably die, but you know, at least you won't be dying on our territory. So that's the question, like, I don't know, like, is there such a thing as a virtuous act? Was I actually doing something potentially evil under the guise of virtue? Something like that. Okay. So...
One day he went dumb, one day I went blind, one day we'll go deaf, one day we were born, one day we will die, the same day, the same second. Is that not enough for you?
Okay, so let's listen to the divination for Lake over Lake, the Joyous. I don't know, Hexagram 58, I don't know how that one came about. It doesn't feel as if that's the answer, but maybe it is. Let's see. We've got the AI Oracle ready to deliver the verdict, the judgment.
The judgment for Hexagram 58, the Joyous, begins with a call to perseverance within joy. Joy in this hexagram is not the light, fleeting happiness that comes with surface pleasures. It is a profound state of engagement and sincerity. This Joyous is composed of two lakes mirroring each other, a symbol of depth, mutual resonance and an opening of the heart. The lake as an image suggests reflection and mutual mirroring, human interactions and gestures that both reveal and conceal. It's here that we might consider the notion of virtue. The lake reflects what stands before it without alteration, showing us both the beauty and the darkness in ourselves and our acts. It speaks of the value of staying with one's intention, of bringing presence to the motivations underlying our actions, rather than seeking to escape or transcend them in the name of virtue. In the Yi's language, perseverance is favorable. This means a willingness to engage continuously, even when outcomes are ambiguous. If we take your question on virtue seriously, whether any act can be truly selfless, or if it's just performative virtue signaling, the answer here does not simplify the question. It suggests that true joy and perhaps true virtue come not from a single act, but from staying engaged with one's motives over time, reflecting as lakes do, without the need to alter what's reflected. This hexagram, therefore, does not imply a binary between selflessness and selfishness, but rather a nuanced space where motives are both personal and interconnected. The third moving line, you had a moving line, yes? The third moving line in Joyous, being yin, introduces a delicate yet profound challenge. In classical interpretations, the third position is often one of ambiguity or testing, as it straddles the lower and upper trigrams. Here, the line warns against the trap of superficial virtue, where joy or kindness is performed rather than felt. This line seems to question the motivations underlying virtuous acts, nudging us to recognize when they serve not the other, but rather one's own self-image or comfort. If we consider the image of your own situation with the mouse, the idea of the third line hints that our actions, however well intended, often stem from a blend of conscious and unconscious motives. Even when aiming for kindness, we can fall into subtle patterns of self-assertion or discomfort avoidance, preserving our own peace by trying to control or distance the creature from our space. The act of freeing the mouse was virtuous by some accounts, yet this line implies that true virtue is not in the act itself, but in a readiness to see where it aligns with or diverges from genuine compassion. The trap here is not malicious intent, but the tendency to escape the discomfort of examining what might be selfish or even harmful beneath the surface. In human terms, this line also recalls the passage in Larkin's poem when he discovers the hedgehog killed by the mower. His horror is real, yet the act is irreversible, and so he reflects with the painful awareness that his intentions... Do you want me to continue? Shall I continue while you're away? Or... So shall I explain what's going on? What we're seeing? Well, this is actually all going on in Steve's head, of course. This is him imagining the route the mouse, if it had lived and decided to come back home, the route it would have taken to get back. Like some sort of rodent Odysseus returning to his Penelope. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Coming back to where we were. Yang's influence here is akin to the light of clear intention, where strength does not override compassion but illuminates it. This line, this moving line, if you remember, the fifth line, speaks to the possibility of owning one's acts, motives and potential fallibility in a way that is liberating. Rather than fixating on whether the action is purely virtuous or merely self-serving, it suggests that one should stay present with the complexity of your motivations, allowing a genuine joy or peace to emerge from a more honest place. In the context of your question, this line implies that recognizing one's own selfish motives does not preclude a virtuous outcome. Rather, it can lead to a purer form of kindness when embraced fully. The mouse's vulnerability, its hesitation, and even your own ambivalence reflect this. There is the joy of letting go, we might say, of accepting the limits of control and certainty. In the fifth line, the joyous then becomes a call not to overcome selfishness, but to integrate it, to understand that virtue and selfishness are not so much opposites as aspects of the same spectrum of human behavior. The double lake configuration strengthens the theme of reflection. In Taoist and Confucian thought, the lake as water is a liminal space between form and formlessness. Lake over lake emphasizes resonance and interconnection, suggesting that true understanding, or virtue, is not rooted in rigidity, but in openness to one's own complexity and the complexity of others. When you cast the hexagram in response to the question about virtue, the yi seems to be urging a stance that mirrors the lake. Rather than asserting virtue or purity, it invites you to simply be, to allow the question of motives to arise and be reflected upon without rushing to categorize or judge. In essence, lake over lake speaks to the mutual mirroring of self and other, of virtue and self-interest. Virtue in this sense may not be a matter of absolute selflessness, but of an ongoing willingness to see one's own motives clearly and respond accordingly. The act of taking the mouse out, though imperfect, becomes a form of humility, perhaps, and attentiveness, a readiness to engage in a cycle of reflection that neither denies nor fully resolves the tension between self and the other. When the joyous, hexagram 58, transforms through those two moving lines into hexagram 34, great Vigour, we move from contemplation to action. Thunder over heaven brings a surge of vitality, an intense focus on strength, and an impulse toward decisive movement. Yet in the context of virtue, this great Vigour is not about force, but it is rather about intentional power, a strength rooted in awareness rather than domination. Here, the yi suggests that true virtue, if it exists, lies in the ability to act with an understanding of one's own capacities and limitations, a kind of responsible, tempered strength. This vigorous force also recalls Larkin's line, "While there is still time." It echoes the call to use one's strength not for selfish ends, but in the service of presence and care, especially given the transient nature of life. In this sense, great Vigour becomes a reminder that we too operate within constraints. Our attempts to do good are limited by time, understanding, and the inevitable ripple effects of our actions. Virtue then is not defined by purity, but by the willingness to act within this ambiguous space with a power informed by compassion and restraint. The sequence from the joyous to great Vigour offers a kind of layered response, we might say, to your question. It suggests that while there may be no absolute pure virtue free of self-interest, there is a way of engaging with life that acknowledges and integrates these complexities. The virtue here is found less in specific acts than in your approach, the way we might decide to meet each situation, question ourselves, and remain open to the evolving nature of our motivations. If virtue has any reality, the yi seems to suggest it lies in this reflective, attentive practice rather than in an unattainable purity. In this view, virtuous action is not about eradicating self-interest or achieving some ideal form of selflessness. Rather, it is about remaining mindful, engaging with the ambiguity of each act, and understanding that our motives will never be entirely free of self. Like the lakes, we are mirrors, showing not only what we intend, but also what lies beneath. True joy and perhaps true virtue lies in accepting this, acting with clarity when we can and with humility when we cannot. This reading then, hopefully, aligns with Larkin's concluding lines. We should be careful of each other. We should be kind while there is still time. It is perhaps an acknowledgement of fragility, both of others and of our own motives, and the importance of recognizing that even imperfect actions, if done with awareness, have the potential to resonate meaningfully. In the end, the Yi does not give a simple answer, but offers a path, one of sincerity, reflection, and the courage to face the imperfections and our imperfections in ourselves and in the world.